Welcome to the Spirit Experience podcast, where we discuss spiritual practices for healing and happiness. Join us each Monday for enlightening conversations with spiritual teachers across a variety of practices and modalities. On today's episode, I'm talking with Tami LoPresti, a numerologist who helps people get what they want by learning who they are. In the last 18 years of practicing this work, Tami has found multiple ways to combine numerology with the magic of coaching to produce incredibly fast transformations for her clients. She is deeply present to encourage and empower you to rediscover who you truly are by bringing your magic to the surface so you can finally step into the life you were always meant to live. Tami, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Tami, I find it so interesting that you are a life coach, but you've added the spiritual component of numerology. And I was hoping that you could share with our listeners what brought you to numerology and some of the transformation that you see through the use of numerology, and perhaps even, a personal story of your own.
Yeah. Well, I really didn't know that numerology was going to be my thing. I didn't know it was going to be the big thing of my life. I didn't realize that it actually has been intertwined throughout lifetimes that I've had. Like, I know that now from doing past life regressions, but I really didn't know that. I grew up with numerology, and my mom had always practiced it my whole life. And I just grew up in wonder thinking, wow, this is amazing stuff, because I would watch her sit with someone. I'm an empath, and I can feel when the room changes, like I can feel when people are having breakthroughs. And I would watch people come into our house and like have dinner with us. And then she would do their numbers. And after dinner, it was like the whole room would brighten because they would be having these breakthroughs and these epiphanies about their life. And I would watch people leave better people than when they came. And I used to always watch and I'd be like, wow, this is amazing. Whatever she's doing, she's tapping into something that unlocks people and that turns them back into who they're really meant to be and things like that. And she never did it as a profession. She always did it as just this little side thing. I always said it was like a parlor trick. It was like, wherever she would go, people would always like come to her and ask her questions. And I just always thought that was really cool. And then I wanted to learn, and she kept saying, no, I don't want to teach you. And first she would say, you're not mature enough. And then she would say, you're not ready. And then, she just said all these things. And then finally, when I was 30, I moved back home for a year, and I just followed her around with a notebook. And I was like, Mom, what does the one mean? What does the two mean? What does the three mean? And she reluctantly taught me. And then I started practicing. And once I started practicing, it was like the whole world opened up. It was like I entered a new part of life where I could understand people. Like before that, I couldn't understand people. I couldn't understand why people did things. And I was always fascinated with like, why do people do that? Like I could never understand. And then when I started practicing numerology, it was like it gave me this key to understanding life. And not only that, it's like I started showing up places and helping people the way that I do now. And I started seeing big transformations in people's lives because of it. Like what I do is I tell people who they are and why they're here and what they came here to do. And something happens in that where it is like a key unlocking your truth. And it gives you this permission that you can't get anywhere else. It's like a soul permission where it says, this is who I really am. And even though you know that, you don't really know that on the surface until somebody says it. And as soon as you say it, it's like that person now is free to be who they are. And so I don't know if I answered your question, but this is what this has been for me all my life now, for 18 years of my life now. So
You answered it perfectly, because I really wanted to find your journey into it. And,
okay.
obviously something shifted for you as you
Mhm.
saw how it shifts other people. And
Yes.
one of the things I heard you say is understanding why people do what they do, because I think a lot of our hurts and suffering come from other people in this
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So, maybe expand on that for our listeners, how numerology can sometimes help them release that attachment to what other people are doing.
Yeah. Well, one thing that is really important to understand is that we all come here with a goal, like a main goal, kind of like a mission. We decide that we're going to learn these specific things in this lifetime. And then because we decide to learn these specific things, we are set to a vibration of that specific purpose, so that vibration actually calls in other people that are working on the same things. So we attract people who are just like us, only we attract people who are working on the same thing, just a little bit different and a little bit different and a little bit different. And if you look at like a whole page of charts, you'll see that all the people in your immediate world are working on the same mission as you. They're just working on it from a different angle so that they can teach you and you can teach them. And that's why like your parents trigger you so much. Usually your parents are the extreme version of whatever you're working on, extreme and opposite a lot of times.
Mhm.
And like what you'll see is that the reason why you get triggered by people, like the reason why they will say something or do something or even look at you a certain way and it will affect you is because they are actually working on teaching you that specific thing that you came here to learn. And you don't always realize that. Like, you don't always realize that they're reflecting something back to you that you actually are trying to understand. You think, oh man, this person's trying to annoy me, and like maybe on a conscious level, that is kind of what's happening. But on a subconscious level, it's like this was the plan all along. The plan all along was for you to grasp all the understanding that you could out of all of the things that you're doing right now with all the people that you're doing them with. And the other thing is that some people in your immediate circle are going to be very vocal, very good at using their voice, very well spoken, things like that. Other people aren't going to be able to express their emotions. So they're going to teach you more in action than words. And you're going to have your certain way that you do things. And you're going to be like, oh, I wish this person would just tell me how they feel or tell me what they want or tell me what they need. And they can't do that. And they're specifically here that way on purpose so that you also learn. If you can't say something, you give a gift or you show up and do a service. And it's like all these different facets of one big diamond, like this big diamond of a life that you're trying to learn all the different angles and parts of. They're all the people in your life. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Like, it's pretty fascinating to look at the whole thing at once and to say, oh, wow, your mom's working on this too, but your mom's working on like extreme narcissism, so that you learn how to be an extreme empath. It's like one person's working on shutting it off so another person can work on turning it on. And then another person's working on the middle part. It's just so cool, like it's really cool. Yeah.
You really bring up a lot in that. I love where you're going and how you're positioning, what our life really is about as we travel through here.
Yeah.
One of the things that came up for me, and I think a lot of listeners will be in this spot as well. So, we're all here. We volunteered for this and we set up our little agreements. I went through an experience with my brother where I finally said, okay, I'm going to release this and I'm going to cut off. And
Mhm.
it took a long time because I kept trying to figure out, no, is the lesson that I learned to be more compassionate and just deal with it and just put up with it? Or is the lesson that I need to learn to say, no, this is my line? And I just went back and forth with that for so long. And finally I said, no, it's time to release this and walk away. And boy, it really did help everything. But it's not always easy to make that decision. And I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, so I had something similar in my life. I have worked my whole life to try and get along with my dad. I love my dad, he's amazing, but he chooses a very different lifestyle than me, and I just can't do it anymore, basically. I spent my whole life I guess I spent my whole life trying to save him from himself in a way,
Mhm.
and I got to a point where it was destroying my life. Like, I realized I would get so far in my business, and then he would come back and live with me for a few months, and then everything would burn to the ground again. And I was doing that pattern for years, and then finally I had a really great coach that was really very honest with me. And and she really upset me actually, but she really helped me. But she said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because I have to, like nobody else will. Like he's burned all his bridges. Nobody else will help
Oh
him."
God, yeah.
And she said, "Well, you're enabling him." And I was like, "I know. Everybody says that. Like I don't want to hear that anymore. I'm not choosing his behavior." She said, "No, you're not choosing his behavior. You're allowing his behavior to continue because you're enabling it."
Mhm.
And, at first I was like, okay, and I was very dismissive of it, because I've heard it all my life. Everyone's told me, stop that, but I never knew how because he will literally die. That's how it feels,
Right.
And
Yes.
and so she said, "Why are you the only one that can help him?" She said, "Don't you think he's capable of helping himself?" And I was like, "No." And she said, "Well, what would he do if you weren't here?" Like, she said, "If you died tomorrow, would he have to die too?" And I said, "No, he would figure it out." And she said, "Well, you just said you're the only one that can help him." I was like, "Well, I mean, I guess he would have to figure it out because he's not going to die because I die." And she said, "Why? Why wouldn't he if you're the only one that can help him?" And I said, "Well, I guess I'm not the only one that can help him. I guess he could help himself if he had to." And she said, "Okay, so it's not your job." And I said, "No." And it was the way she said it. And she said a lot more than that. But it really it upset me at first a lot. It triggered my ego. It made me really angry. It made me wanna fire her, at first. But then it made me realize that if I don't put up a boundary in my own life, I'm going to give up all of my life for this, and I'm not helping anyone. I'm not really
Right.
helping him, and I'm not really helping me. And she also told me this little story where she said, so I've been following her journey since she started. The first year that she started, she offered me free coaching. Now you can't get close to her under $10,000, and I mean, you can't get near her to even work with her. And I followed that journey. And she said, 2 years ago, I was going through a really hard time and I didn't know if this business was going to work. And she said, I was doing free coaching. And she said, now I make millions of dollars. And she said, if you had come along 2 years ago and out of the kindness of your heart wanted to save me from my problems and help me, I would never have gotten here where I'm at now. And I would be so mad right now if I had not figured that out. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're right. So I backed off and I mean, didn't back off. I kicked him out of my house, and I cut off all communication. But the truth is that we have to make those decisions. Like, you have to decide that you are fully capable of managing your own life, and you have to give other people the respect and the honor to be
Mhm.
fully capable of managing their own life, even if they think that they can't, because they will figure it out. And the more that you rescue them, the less that they're okay, kinda.
Yeah.
I had to learn that the hard way, I've learned it the hard way so many times, but that was the big one where I learned it really the hard way, and it breaks my heart to not talk to him. I love him so much, but it also is the right thing to do for both of us because he is now figuring out how to navigate his life, and I am figuring out how to navigate mine without a whole bunch of people depending on me,
Right,
So,
right. And just all of the energy that comes with somebody who's got all of that going on with them, and,
yeah,
with
yeah,
my brother, there were a lot of personal attacks as well. So
yeah,
it just
too.
did I finally gave myself permission to say, this is where I draw the line and I let go. I like
Yeah,
what you said too, that we do have to respect and honor their life path in this,
yeah,
it's really not up to us to save them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I teach my students, I teach numerology class now. And one of the things I teach the students is that, just because we chose to be good people and to not hurt other people and to help does not mean that someone is off their path if they chose different. Like we need all of that to make the world go around. Like we need the good and the bad and the ugly. We need all of those things. And someone has to sign up for those terrible missions too. And
Yes.
the point is to grow this one soul to understand this experience all the way. And you can't understand it without the extremes. Like, you need the extreme bad to understand the extreme good. You wouldn't understand how to have gratitude if you didn't know what it felt like to not have what you wanted, you know? So it's like you may think that someone's off their path because they're suffering, or they may be suffering on purpose to show all of us how not to suffer. And they actually may be the highest soul,
I know, I
I
know,
tell people, yeah, I tell
I
people
know.
all the time, I'm like, do not disregard the drunks and the drug addicts and the homeless people. A lot of them are really, really high souls that signed up for missions just to teach us how to have a good life,
Yeah,
and that's beautiful, like it's all
yeah.
beautiful.
I really didn't understand that concept before my son passed over. And, once he passed over, it really triggered me going deep into seeking my own spirituality and connection with him. And through that whole process, I really came to understand that, yes, some of the people who, we hate what they're doing in the world. They're here for a reason too, and they do have a mission. And yes, they might just be one of the higher souls.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of that understanding comes from some of the other work, some of the other stuff that you were talking about earlier with me before we got on the call, in doing like past life regression, in between life regression. We can start to see the soul's bigger picture.
Yeah. Well, and just understanding that this one little glimpse, this one little life, okay, like it feels so big and so important, but
Yeah,
this one life is just one little part of this entire big experience that your soul is going to have,
sure.
And so when you think of, so I always say, if you could look at your life from a bird's eye view, like if you could look at it from the whole beginning to the end, the whole timeline, you would know that most of the things that are happening don't really matter. They don't really equal much. And you would realize that, like, this isn't to be taken so seriously. Like, it really is an experience to learn what it is to be human. You're just trying to understand it. You're trying to concept it and you're trying to survive it because it's a really hard experience. But you're not actually meant to be unhappy. Like, you're not actually meant to suffer. You're meant to learn how not to. And when
Oh,
we make these
perfect.
really hard choices, like you make this choice to tell your brother to exit your life, you make this choice not because you don't love him or you don't want him in your life. You make this choice because you choose happiness over suffering. And the more you choose that, the more your life actually starts brightening up and starts being the way that you want it to be. And it's not that you don't want all the people there, it's that you don't want the people that are bringing all the muck and making it so
Yeah,
hard. It doesn't have to be hard,
yeah.
and not everyone knows that. And also, a lot of people think that suffering is part of it, that you're supposed to do that. And I don't believe that you are. I really don't believe that's what we're here for.
I
So,
absolutely agree. One of the things that I had a coach tell me is that, pain is going to be inevitable in life. It
mhm.
just is,
Yeah,
but suffering's optional. And I was really thinking a lot about that when I was trying to decide, do I put a stop to this because I was suffering. Just the thought of him, just I could feel it in my gut,
yeah,
and just the things he would say, it would be very hard to overcome so that I could be productive in my day. And
yeah.
so I really love the way that you put it, that we're not meant to be unhappy. We're meant to learn how to ease our suffering.
Yes. And, it's okay to have days of sadness. It's okay to
Mm,
have days of depression, days of anger, days of, those are moments, but those aren't lifetimes. Like some
mhm.
people get stuck in that and they stay there. And you don't know how to bring them out of it because it's almost like they become comfortable in it. And the thing is, you have to choose, is that how I want my life to be? Like you have to kind of look at your life every so often and say, does this look the way that I want it to look? And if it doesn't, you just start making all these changes. You just start looking around. Like you can even walk through your house and say, do I even like the way that this looks? Maybe I should paint the walls. Maybe I should add some decor. Like maybe I should put up a picture or two of something that makes me smile, you know? I mean, first, I want to say, I'm really sorry that you lost your son. There's no words for things like that. Grief is something that is probably our best teacher in life, especially extreme grief. It is the best teacher you will ever have. It is also the most painful thing that you can probably go through. You know, it is the most extreme pain, and it's a pain that you can't touch. And it's a weird kind of pain because you can't find it. It's so weird to lose somebody that you love so deeply because you can't find them in the world again and you end up searching. Like that's kind of what grief is about. It's like searching for that moment where they exist still and you can't find it and you're always looking for it. The thing with it though is that when you look back, you say, you know, like, of course you never wanted it to happen. And of course it never should have happened. You know, that's always how it feels. But when you look back years later, you go, wow, this made me who I am. If this didn't happen, my heart would not have opened 5 times wider, you know, and my life would not be so much sunnier. I lost my best friend when I was 16.
Mhm.
And I remember that day we were driving to the police station, and I remember seeing these girls laughing on the side of the road. They were like teenagers and they were like walking with their parents or something. And I remember I was looking out the window and I saw them laughing. And they didn't know her, they didn't know me, they were just people, you know? And I could not concept how anyone in the world could ever laugh again. And
Yeah,
I was so angry with them. And I remember like
yeah.
deciding in that moment that I would never smile again. I was like, I'm never going to smile. I'm never going to laugh. There is absolutely nothing in the world that's happy ever again. And it was so beautiful when I learned how to find joy again. You
Mhm.
know, it took me a long time, but when I found joy again and I realized that that's all that she would have wanted for me, it was like, it was such a relief and such a moment to celebrate because some people don't ever do that again. Some people don't ever find that again. So I guess I want to say, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but congratulations on finding joy again and finding purpose again.
Well, and the thing that I wanted to say too, I actually know that Levi still exists. And I think
Yeah,
for me, it was in truly having that experience of knowing that he still exists
yeah,
that I was finally able to move into a different space. And, I like right from day one, he began sending messages, signs and messages, and you accept them. And then you're like, well, is it really real? Then it's real. And then there's no way this could not be real. And,
yeah.
and you go through all of these stages through it. And I remember,
Mhm.
just being in even year 9, and I thought I was okay. I had really understood that Levi, was sending these messages.
Yeah,
And then I just went down. I mean, all I wanted to do was throw myself in front of a train. And I thought
yeah,
about it constantly, all day, every day kind of thing. But I mean, just like even though it's been, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, I was still getting messages on days I really needed them out of the
mhm,
blue from Levi's friends. And I'm
yeah.
living in a completely different country now, not even around them, right? And one morning I woke up and I was filled with understanding that he still exists. Every message, every sign was sent deliberately by him. We're still interacting. We still have a relationship. We're just in different
Yeah.
states. It filled me so much I was beaming, and I was beaming for weeks. And
Mhm.
I'd think about him and I would just smile, knowing where he was. And, one of the things that I did early on was an exercise. When I would sink really low, I would envision that moment that he went into the light and the experience that it was for him, because that would kind of just help me get past the next few moments.
Yeah. Yeah, loss is big. It really is big and beautiful too, though. So I said I lost my best friend. I also lost my daughter's father a few years ago, who I believe was my twin flame. We weren't together, but he was my best friend most of my life. And he died suddenly in 2020, right after the pandemic started. Actually, the pandemic started the week that he died. The world
Wow.
shut down that week, which I thought was very fitting. Um, but I went through very serious grief that whole year. I spent literally a year on my knees, honestly, just crying, and trying to decide if I wanted to live still, and trying to decide if the world was worth it. And he sent me a million signs. I mean, he still holds my hand every time I talk about him. I feel someone squeeze my hand. And the thing is, I know he's here. And I have no doubts about that anymore. I did it first, but I don't anymore at all. I didn't even after the first few months. It was very obvious, like strikingly obvious. One day, though, I remember I woke up and I don't remember what happened. Like, I'm sure something happened, but I don't remember what happened. And I remember just kind of looking up in the air and I went, "Oh my God, like this is the most amazing thing. I understand now. Like, I understand that love is real. Like, I've been asking for so many years, what is love and how does it work?" And I decided that love was the only thing that's actually real. It's the only thing that we take with us. But what I didn't understand is that you can take love everywhere with you. Like it goes throughout the universe, it goes through time and space, it goes through dimensions, it goes through lifetimes. It doesn't change. I looked up in the air and I was like, our love survived death. Like we are still in a relationship. Like he is still my best friend and he is still on the other side existing somewhere loving me. Like I was so mad when he died because he drew a picture of me when I was pregnant with our daughter when I was 17 years old, okay, and he was 19. And I woke up one day and he was drawing me on a box because we were moving. And I saved that box for years and then eventually I framed it because it was deteriorating, but it's just a picture of me like, sleeping. And when I woke up, he said, "No, shut your eyes. I'm drawing you, and I had to pretend I was asleep still. And anyway, I've had that picture hanging, like I have it in my office now, but like I've always had that picture hanging somewhere where I can see it. And I've had fights with other boyfriends about it, even. But what I told my kids years ago is I said, the reason why that picture has to hang in my house is because it reminds me all the time that someone loves me. Somewhere in the world, there is someone who loves me completely and truly all the way. And it is this reminder that even though we were not together, romantically anymore, it was like I knew that somewhere, someone in the world was breathing and loving me. And when he died, I didn't think I could live in a world where I didn't know that still. Like, because he's the only person I've ever known that has loved me completely. Even my kids, it feels like there's limit, but I felt like he loved me completely in a way that I've never been loved before. And so I was like, I really didn't know if I could live in a world where someone wasn't loving me somewhere. And then I realized that day that, like, he's still somewhere loving me, whether I can see him or not. Our love survived death. Like, our love is like living through dimensions. Like, how cool is that? Like it hit me in a way that it felt like I was more grateful that he died than him living. And not that I would ever want him to die, but like I was so grateful in that moment just to know that that's real and to know that that love lives on and that you don't lose anything. Like not only do you not lose them, you don't lose the feeling of them. You don't lose the beautifulness that you created together. You don't lose that amazing beautiful thing that you had that you have because you always have it. Once it's there, it never goes away.
Right.
And that was what saved me, I think. That feeling, that knowing, that beautiful stream of love that I know that is now drifting through all of time and space, like that's how it feels.
That hit me like a ton of bricks when you said,
Yeah.
"Love is the only thing we take with us," because I absolutely know that to be true, but I've never heard that sentence before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, that is so powerful. So
Yeah.
powerful,
You know how I learned that? Because years ago, I ended a long relationship and I moved across the country. And I spent a year trying to find myself when I moved. I tried to decide what do I want now and how do I want my life to look and whatever. I wanted to start over from nothing in a way. And
Mhm.
I sat here. I remember sitting at my desk and thinking, what is real? Because nothing feels real. Like what is real? So I've had trouble with reality ever since I was in my 20s because I had a near death experience. And when I had the near death experience, I knew instantly that none of this was real. I came back, I decided to come back, but I never saw life the same again. I couldn't take it seriously because I could tell that that was real and this wasn't. And so I've always had trouble with that. So this was years after that, even. And I sat here and I kept saying, but what is real? And I would look around and I would go, but what is real? What is actually real? Because nothing is real. You can tell. And then I thought, like, you could lose everything that you own. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference. You just get more things. And people come and go out of your life and all these things. And I finally said, well, love is real because love isn't tangible. You can't hold it, but it's so real. It exists. I may not be able to define it, but that is real. And I know that when I leave here, that is all that I'm allowed to take and all the love that's in your heart. And then I thought, okay, so if love is the only thing that I can agree exists in the world, then I want as much of that as I can get. So now I go around and I go, how many things can I love? How many people can I love? How many experiences can I love? And I just want to gather as much love as I can possibly have so that I can take as much of this with me as I can, because I think that's all you can do, you know?
Oh,
So,
beautiful, beautiful, Tammy.
yeah.
I actually had a teacher who also had a near-death experience, and she told me the story where she was floating above and,
Mhm.
her family's around, the EMTs are there, and she was just watching it all
Yeah.
unfold, and then she
Yeah.
became aware that there was somebody next to her,
Yes.
and in that moment, she knew them for an eternity, but couldn't tell you who they were. But
Yeah.
what she said to them was, "They think that's real. We gotta tell them it's not real."
Yeah, it's true. That's the big thing. I mean, of course, there were lots of big things that I learned from that were profound and life-changing. But the biggest thing was when I came back, I went, "Holy crap, none of this is real." Like, not even a little bit, like, not even close to real. This is so illusionary. And then at some point, I started seeing energy, like, I can see energy now. And when that first started, I remember waking up one day and I was vibrating, like I could feel my whole body vibrating, like I had just come back in my body or something. And I looked around the room and I have these like dressers across the room. And I could see all the particles of all the dressers and all the particles of all the pictures. Everything was just made up of particles. And I could see them like moving, like dancing almost. And I was like, oh my goodness, like nothing's real. know? And it was just so I spent like 3 days waking up like that. I think I was being taught what it was or something, and I was just like, "Oh my goodness." And it's just different levels of learning, this is not real. And I gotta say, knowing that it's not real, and then also knowing how real it really is of an experience, you want it to be real, it helps you to take more risks, and it helps you to be braver. It helps you to follow your ambition and to like decide on things that you wouldn't normally do. Like it helps you to be brave and to say, oh, I'll go on that trip, or I'll go see this place, or I'll go meet with this person. It helps you to face things that you might have hidden from if you took it too seriously.
Right.
And it helps you also like, okay, like I got a huge tax bill a few weeks ago. It helps you look at that and go, this is okay because this is not going to end my life. This one single thing is not going to end this life. It's okay. Whereas I think if I was taking it more seriously, I would be crushed by that. I would be like, "Oh no, I can't do a business," like but it makes you look at it different. And yeah, I had the same experience where I was floating out of my body and I started seeing my body laying there in the bed, and I knew that I was dying. Well, I didn't really know what was happening, but I had already died a few times, like leading up to that, where they had to keep restarting my heart. And so it was almost familiar in a way, but this was the big time. This was real. Like there was someone right next to me, and I couldn't see her, but I could hear her voice. And I knew that I had known her forever, as she must have been one of my best friends or something. I don't know, but I just call her an angel because I don't know what she is, but she had the most beautiful voice I've ever heard in my life. And she didn't have a voice. Like it was all telepathic, and she didn't speak in words. It was like a song. It sounded like a song. And all I heard was, okay, it's time to go now. Okay, it's time to go now. And as she was saying that, my body was raising, and it was like every time she said it, I would go up a little bit higher. And I wasn't going to the ceiling, I was just going a little bit higher, like a few feet. And what happened was, as I was going, it was like I would follow this girl to the end of the earth. It was the most beautiful feeling I've ever felt. And it was like I never felt so much love ever. Like I was completely surrounded in love and acceptance and all of that. And as I was realizing that I was dying, I was like, no, 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 no. Like I can't do this. And then she started showing me flashes of my family. Like it was like a movie screen almost. And it
Mm.
was like my dad would come, and then my daughter would come, and then my mom would come. And she was showing me like everyone's going to be okay. Like she would show me where they are now and where they will be after I pass. And she was like, everyone's going to be okay. It's okay. They all know that this could have happened. Like I had a baby at the time. She was only like 10 months old. And she even showed me the baby, and she said she's going to be okay. She signed up for this too. Like she knew that this could have happened, and it's okay. Everyone made plans knowing that this was a possibility, and it's all okay. I did choose to come back because of my daughters, and because I couldn't leave them in the situation that they were going to be in. Like they were not going to be okay. I mean, they were going to be okay, but not by my standards of okay. And I just didn't want that for them. That is why I chose to come back. But it was like, that was a hard decision, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because all that she kept telling me is if you go back, it's going to be really, really, really hard. And she kept saying that, "Are you sure that you wanna go back? Because it's gonna be really, really hard," because I had a long recovery, And it was the best thing I ever did. I'm glad that I came back. But yeah, I don't know. And then I guess like that leads me to thinking a lot of people think like when their loved ones leave them that they're not okay, that they're stuck somewhere, or that
Mhm.
something happened where they didn't know and they got lost in some limbo. In my experience, I don't see how that's possible. There was no way. Like, there was no way to get stuck because there was someone right there. And I was being guided the entire time. It was like the most peaceful, most beautiful thing I've ever felt. So I can't imagine how anyone could actually get stuck. I mean, but that's just my opinion. I don't know what everybody else goes through. It's just I would find it very hard to believe that you don't just transition to the right place wherever you're going.
Right. I would find it very hard to believe as well. I just,
Yeah.
I've never had a near death experience, but sometimes I
Yeah.
feel like losing a child takes you right up as close to that experience as you
Oh,
can
yeah.
because that veil gets really thin if
Yeah.
you allow that experience. So, yeah,
Yeah.
and like I said, because I mean, I watched so many videos of people who had transitioned and come back and tell their
Mhm.
stories. And that's where I learned to do that exercise, where I would envision that beautiful moment where Levi transitioned and all the love that he was receiving and the
Yes.
joy he was
Yes.
feeling. And seriously, I think it's being able to do that is one of the reasons that I am still here because
Yeah.
it would make me okay for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I learned something maybe like a year or two ago. One of my friends does QHHT. So it's called QHHT, and it's a mixture between a past life regression and a higher self-talk. You go under hypnosis and they take you through a past life experience, and then you can ask questions at the end. Like you write down questions, and then the person doing it will ask you those questions to your higher self while you're under
Mhm.
hypnosis. It is extremely amazing. But she does these like talks, she does these videos on YouTube sometimes where she has a friend of hers, help her, like where he goes under hypnosis and they ask questions that like her audience would like to ask, and I don't remember what the question exactly was, but I remember him saying, you can ask God or your higher power or whatever you believe in, you can ask them to show you what it is, what it feels like to be surrounded and enveloped in that love that you came from. Like you can ask, show me all the love that I come from. Show me all the love that is actually here for me. Show me what that love feels like. Now, he said this under hypnosis, and I watched it, and so I wrote it down because I was like, "That's a great idea. I wanna see if it works," kinda, like, I'll try little things like that. And so, a couple nights later, I just read that right as I was falling asleep, and I just said, "Show me all the love that I came from. Show me all the love that I deserve. Show me all the love." I don't know what I all wrote. And immediately from the inside out, it was like my whole inside turned pink, and it was like I was held in the most love I've ever felt in my life, and the only thing that I could compare that to is my near-death experience. I highly recommend trying that because every time I've done it, it happens again, and it happens instantly. As soon as I say, "Show me," it's like they're just waiting to show me. It's like they can't wait to hug me and show me all of this amazing love, and it's the most beautiful feeling you'll ever feel. So, definitely try it.
That's beautiful. I think that's a beautiful place to end this conversation,
Yeah.
encouraging all our listeners to give that a try, in the understanding that love is the only thing that we get to take with us. That's such a beautiful statement. I'm going to be meditating on that for a
Yeah,
while because
I mean,
I
use it, it's
absolutely know it to
real.
be true. I just had never
Yeah,
heard it in a sentence before.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so Tammy, I thank you so much for being here. What a beautiful soul you are. I can't wait to see what you create going forward.
Thank you.
And would you let the listeners know how they can find you again? And I will also put all of that information down in the show notes. But I know that people on the call will definitely be wanting to get in touch with you.
Of course. So you can find me at TamiLoPresti.com. You probably won't know how to spell that, so look at the show notes. Or you can find me on Facebook. I'm mostly on Facebook. I'm in a couple other places, but I'm not really doing much with Instagram or YouTube yet. But you can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Numerology and Spiritual Wisdom, and I do little mini numerology readings every Friday. I do them live for an hour, or so, a little bit longer sometimes. I also do a membership and I teach numerology class and I give readings, of course, So I do a lot of things, I guess. But yeah, so you can find me at TamiLoPresti.com. That's the main place. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Again, thank you so much for being here. And I hope that in the future we can have another conversation.
of course. Thank you.
All right. You've been listening to the Spirit Experience podcast, where we discuss spiritual practices for healing and happiness. To join one of our free Spirit Experience classes, see the link in the show notes. Have a joyful week, and I'll see you next Monday.